What is up, everybody? Eric here from That's Wrestling. Thanks for tuning in to the AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite post show. If you would like to get a hold of me, you can shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. You can also find me over on Twitter at thatswrestling1 with the number 1. Also, I am looking for anybody who's interested in possibly being a co-host, either specifically for AEW or for New Japan or for both, or a rotating set of co-hosts if that's the case and people can't make it every week or whatever. So if you are interested, shoot me a line, eric@thatswrestling.com, and I will get with you. So that is how you do a go-home show. So this is the post-show for AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite for, what are we? November 6th, 2019. So this was the go-home show going into Full Gear, and that was one heck of an ending. But before we get to tonight's show, I just want to quickly touch on AEW Dark from last night. So we had a few matches. We had Shawn Spears versus Michael Nakazawa. It was a pretty straightforward match as far as Michael Nakazawa matches go. He brought out the baby oil. He did his antics. But in the end, Shawn Spears, even though, he did play into the gimmick a bit, but he overcame the gimmick and beat Michael Nakazawa. And then there was a women's tag match. Wasn't that great. There were some obvious cuts in there where they would show the crowd during what was, a cut or whatever. So you could tell there were some mess ups that they were trying to cover up. But this was Allie and Sadie Gibbs versus Big Swole, and Mercedes Martinez. Like I said, it was okay, but there was definitely some obvious cuts, and yeah, it was just kind of it was an okay, kind of sloppy match. And then we had the last match of AEW Dark was Jimmy Havoc and Joey Janela versus Jungle Boy and Marko Stunt. This match, like the women's match, probably went longer than it needed to. It was an okay match. Again, nothing huge, but it was slower paced than I thought it would be. And yeah, it wasn't anything huge. And then we had a few things coming out of Dark. So MJF was on commentary for AEW Dark, and he was awesome. Like, he was amazing as a color commentator. So if wrestling doesn't work out for him, commentating is definitely where it's at. He wasn't just, putting over himself. He was actually giving relevant commentary to the match that was going on, to the people who were in the match. So that was really nice to see. I also like they had a camera set up on the commentators. So if they were talking about somebody while they were doing their entrance or whatever, it would cut over to them. So you could actually watch them while they're talking, and it kind of engaged you a little more into what was actually being said. Instead of watching the wrestler just walk down the ramp or anything, watching the commentators actually speak, I think made your brain kind of a little bit more engaged because you were seeing and hearing the same thing instead of hearing the commentators but watching the wrestler walk down. So you kind of had to concentrate on you got a more concentrated intake of information from them. Also, there was an awesome Britt Baker promo, and it did not appear on Dynamite tonight, which is kind of a bummer, but it was awesome. And if you didn't see it on AEW Dark, go check it out. It's probably around the 40-minute mark or so. It was before the main event, but it was awesome. And these promos need to be on Dynamite, and I don't know why this one wasn't, because it really built the match that's happening on the pre-show at Full Gear. And then we had a undesirable to undeniable with Cody, and he was talking to Jimmy Havoc. It was a really good interview segment right there. And then Dasha from WWE is now with AEW. She's on the Spanish announce team, and in WWE, she had no personality, no charisma, no nothing. And then she is now going to be the co-host for AEW Dark with Tony Schiavone, and she has tons of charisma. She is awesome. She had tons of personality, and it's like, wow, where's this person been? But now she's with AEW, and I think it's going to be a great addition to co-hosting duties on AEW Dark, and I look forward to seeing her. And she was actually shown tonight on the Spanish announce team, though I'm not sure if it actually went out on TV. It was on the Fight TV feed. At one point, the Lucha Bros came out to be at the Spanish commentary desk, and I believe all of that was shown in commercial, so I don't think anybody on TNT actually saw it, but she was out there. And so, again, a good episode of AEW Dark, and it's definitely kind of a must watch if you are following AEW, because stuff happened on Dark that is setting up stuff for Full Gear, and they didn't mention it on Dynamite. Like I said, the Britt Baker promo was only on AEW Dark. It wasn't on Dynamite at all. Don't know why. It was a relatively short segment. It was like 2 minutes. I'm sure they could have found 2 minutes somewhere for it, but they didn't. So I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. Also, there was a segment at the end with Joey Janela was out back smoking, and Tully came up, and then Shawn Spears attacked him, which is kind of why you saw Janela come out to make the save tonight, though they did show a little bit of that video in the show. So there we go. So, all right. So let's talk about AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite for November 6th. And like I said, this is a great go-home show. We had the commentators saying what all the matches were going to be tonight. Great. And then we had Trent versus Pac, and Orange Cassidy and Chucky T came out with Trent. Really, it's kind of, I'm not sure why this match is happening. I don't think there was anything going on with Pac and Best Friends. Not that I can remember, at least. But anyways, Pac had a quick stare down on the outside with Orange Cassidy at one point. Trent takes a couple of hard throws into the barricade, and the action continues on the outside. Trent gets laid out on the ramp. While he's walking back to the ramp, Pac hits a 180 twist dive. JR is actually complaining about the ref letting them go so long on the outside, and then he needs to get control. I agree. The reffing is still a little loose for my taste. Like, they're not trying to make much of an effort to maintain control. Even if I would rather they make at least a little bit of an effort and not be able to deliver than make no effort at all and just let the guys do whatever. I mean, it's one of those really annoying things to me where the refs have absolutely no power. So I would like to see the refs make more of an attempt, and in the final match, at least Aubrey Edwards did make some attempts. And actually, I think there was another match where I heard her say, you got to grab those tag ropes, or one of the other refs said it. But I heard the ref actually say that to the competitors. Hey, you gotta grab those tag ropes. Anyways, Trent is sent to the outside. Orange Cassidy gets in the ring. The crowd was so hot and is so into Orange Cassidy. It's insane. He did his low kicks on Pac, and everyone got a huge cheer. And then he winds up to do his quote-unquote super kick, and Pac just boots him right in the face, sends him to the outside. Pac turns around and finds a waiting Trent, and then Pac gets sent to the outside, and Trent does a flip dive. The crowd was super hot pretty much the entire night. They started chanting, "This is awesome," and this was actually a really good match. They're using a good amount of space around the ring now. they're going to have to make some custom crash pads for the outside, because you can see there's a gap where the padding ends, and then there's just the concrete or the floor or whatever the arena's surface is made out of, and then there's the barricade, and it's a good like 2.5-3 feet, maybe even more, between where the padding ends and where the barricade is. So they might not want to get some bigger pads. And also, I think at some point they're going to want to invest in a more stable barricade, like what WWE uses. It's so it stays more in place, because all these, while it is a good visual to see when the guys get thrown into the barrier and the barrier gets pushed back, obviously it can be a bit dangerous for those sitting in the front row, because they could get hit with the barricade, and we don't want any of that happening. If you watch like New Japan, a lot of the times, well, except in like Cork and Hall, I guess, but a lot of the times they have like the barricade around the ring, and then they have a second barricade, and then the spectators, like, they have a bigger buffer, because they get thrown into the railing so much, so they don't want it hitting audience members. But obviously, you gotta at least do something. So I think a more sturdier outside barricade would be good. Anyways, back to this match. Trent hits a swing DDT for a 2 count. Pac rolls to the outside. Trent follows, but Pac gives him a brainbuster on the floor, rolls Trent back into the ring, hits Black Arrow, and then goes for the pin. The ref, I think there is definitely some miscommunication between the wrestlers and the ref, because the ref counted 2 and stopped for the 3, but Trent did not make a move to kick out, and he did not kick out. So kind of the ref screwed up there. Pac then puts him into a Rings of Saturn. I believe it's what he put him into. And then he gets the submission at that point. So a little bit of a botch right there. I don't know who was at fault. Either they didn't communicate, or who knows. And then Pac grabs the mic. He says he's heard what Hangman said, and he doesn't care, and he's going to make an example of him at Full Gear. So this is a really fun opening match. Not really much to complain about, other than the reffing is a little lackluster, which should be a little bit more. Next up, we had the Cody announcement. Cody came out to make an announcement last week, or was it the week before? It's all blending together at this point. Anyways, the week that he fought Jericho out on the concourse, which I think was last week. So he actually came out to actually make the announcement. One thing I noticed, Tony is wearing earrings. Never noticed that before. It's just an observation. He says he expected Jericho to put together a group like the Inner Circle, because AEW was looking for people to go up against the Elite. He was talking about how Bill Watts and his father, Dusty Rhodes, were both competitors and management, and he hears the criticism about him being management and being in a title match, and he says, if I do not, and then the crowd starts chanting, "You deserve it." And then he says if he does not win the title at Full Gear, he will never challenge for the AEW title again. He goes on some more talking about Jericho and whatnot. But, this promo was on fire. This was an amazing promo, and this is how promos need to be done. Definitely, if you have not seen it, I'm guessing they're probably going to put this up on the YouTube channel or on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. So definitely catch the Cody promo if you did not watch AEW tonight, because it was awesome. And then we had the runner-up match, I guess you can call it. So this is actually a match to find the third team who will be facing SCU and Lucha Bros for the tag titles at Full Gear. So it's going to be a triple threat. between the Lucha Bros, SCU, and the winner of this match is Private Party versus Dark Order. It was a decent start. Really, Isaiah Cassidy and Stu Grayson pretty much put in most of the work for like the first 3/4 of the match. Cassidy pretty much gets beat pillar to post for a pretty long time. Finally, a hot tag gets into Mark Quinn, and he takes over, eventually doing a huge flip dive. Stu Grayson manages to reverse the momentum at one point. Uno hits Cassidy with what looked like a fisherman's Yushigoroshi. It was a pretty cool move. And then Uno hits a cannonball at the same time as Grayson is doing a moonsault. So one of the members of Private Party is laid up in the corner, and another one is actually a little bit farther out from the corner. So Stu Grayson is up on the top rope, and then Uno basically jumps over the person laying down and does a cannonball into the person sitting against the turnbuckle, while Stu Grayson does the moonsault over onto the other person. After a failed double team event on the Private Party, Private Party ends up coming back. They hit Silly String on Uno, which sends him to the outside, and then they hit Gin and Juice on Grayson and pick up the 3 count. One thing that happened here was Grayson was sitting up on the top rope way too long, so it looked a little hinky because he just sat there before they hit Gin and Juice. So it would have been good if somebody at least went over there and threw a few punches in there to keep him there, to make it look like he wasn't just kind of sitting waiting around to get hit with Gin and Juice. Overall, it was a good match. I still don't get Dark Order. This gimmick just doesn't make sense in the landscape of AEW, because AEW for the most part has more of kind of like a realism type of feel to all the competitors, but this gimmick just feels like either supernatural or kind of culty, and I just can't figure it out. They've given us nothing as far as story goes, so it's just one of these gimmicks that either they need to explain what the heck is going on, or they just need to do something else because it's not working. I mean, both Stu Grayson and Evil Uno are great workers. I have no problem with their skills in the ring, but the gimmick itself just is not working for me still, and it didn't sound like it was working for most of the audience either. But anyways, at Full Gear, it's going to be Lucha Bros versus Private Party versus SCU for the titles at Full Gear this Saturday. So that should be a crazy match, especially if you got Lucha Bros and Private Party in there. Hopefully nobody gets seriously injured on that one. Next up, we had a Jericho video package, and I'm going to say it right now. This is probably the greatest video package in wrestling history. I'm just going to say it because I think this was 100% pure gold. It was probably one of the most hilarious packages I've ever seen as well. So had Jericho sitting at like a table in a banquet hall that kind of looked like what you'd see at the hotel lobby or the hotel wherever they're going to have like the breakfasts and stuff, kind of in a big banquet area. And he's sitting there just kind of staring off, and there's some piano music playing that kind of sounds like American Beauty or something like that. Sammy comes in, he's holding a couple bottles of champagne, and he's asking which one Jericho wants, and Jericho is like spacing out, and he just says, "Yep, that's fine." He stands up and he kisses Sammy on the forehead. So I'm like, what is going on? And then I realized like this whole thing is just going to be hilarious. So it has a shot of Jericho sitting in the bathtub, but he has his ring gear on. He has his hat on. He has a scarf on. And you can tell he's actually in his trunks as well, or his tights. It was pretty funny. And then it shows an interview with this lady, and the caption underneath says, "Chris's aunt's friend from church," and she's just talking. And then it shows Jake Hager. He has a lav mic on his shirt, and they're just showing him, and he's just staring at the camera. and that's it. He says nothing. And this is probably one of the best promo packages of all time. And I'm going to say this is probably my favorite video package I've ever seen and could be the greatest video package in wrestling history because it was gold. I was watching the Fight TV feed. During the commercial break, there was actually a sign that said, "Welcome to the minor league." And it had a picture of Kenny Omega doing his gun pointing pose that he usually does before he does like his first V-trigger over in the ropes. And he was pointing at Seth Rollins. So they showed this on the Fight TV stream. It didn't make TV. But it did actually end up on TV in the background at one point, but it didn't make it specifically. So I thought it was pretty funny. And then we had, what was probably the best women's match that has been on AEW so far. We had Riho and Shanna versus Emi Sakura and Jamie Hayter. Last week, I wasn't sure if it was a bruise on Jamie Hayter's thigh or a tattoo. She must have been wearing more opaque tights last week than this week, so it was a tattoo. I couldn't tell last week because it was just kind of blurry. Emi gave Riho a wicked underhook backbreaker. Riho is so flexible that it makes a lot of these moves look so devastating. Backbreakers or any type of like submission where she would be kind of like bending backwards, so like a crossface or a Boston Crab. She is just so flexible. It looks like she's being like folded in half. So it makes it look really good. In the commercial break, Jamie Hayter actually gave Riho a double wet willy. And then the entire audience chants "Usyk F." And then Hayter hits a Uranagi backbreaker. That thing looked devastating. Shanna, at one point, she is amazing. She hit a standing Rana and then a top rope dive to the outside. Then she hit sliced bread and then a double underhook face buster. I think Shanna is going to be a breakout at some point. Obviously, we haven't heard her speak yet, but as far as in-ring goes, she is actually really good. On her first tag in, she was hitting forearms. She was laying them in. They looked really, really good. Probably the best of any of the women I've seen for a while. She hits those forearms and she doesn't back off on them or leave any space, so they look really good. Anyways, later on in the match, Emi hits a double underhook backbreaker on Shanna, and then hits the Vader bomb, and she goes for the pin. Riho breaks it up with a double stomp to Emi's back, lower back. It looked like it did not feel very good. Riho and Sakura exchange roll-ups, and then Emi Sakura ends up pinning Riho in a roll-up for the win. So Riho has suffered her first loss, I believe. I believe it's her first loss during this tag match. Like I said, this was probably the best women's match on any of the AEW shows so far, and I think Shanna is really good, and I'm looking forward to see what she can do with some of the more experienced workers or better workers. So yeah, then we have, and going into, this is going to be, Emi Sakura is actually challenging Riho for the title at Full Gear. So we'll see how that goes. I will do a Full Gear preview show probably on Friday night or maybe even Saturday morning. So we'll revisit the Full Gear card in the next few days. Then we had another Brandy Rhodes video package, and again, it was another kind of cryptic video. She was sitting in a high-backed chair, just kind of like in the dark with some smoke around her, and she was drinking wine. But basically, it sounds like Brandy is going to be like Awesome Kong's manager or tag partner or both. I can't really tell, but it seemed to be promoting Awesome Kong for the most part. Then we had, what pretty much turned out to be a squash. We had Brandon Cutler versus Shawn Spears. So is Brandon Cutler's gimmick just that he likes D&D and that he's friends with the Young Bucks? Because that's really all I know about him. And he got squashed pretty bad by MJF. And he's also been squashed on AEW Dark. So I am unsure what his role is other than being a jobber. That's the best I can say about it. Anyways, the crowd was really blah for this match. The first chant was actually a Tully chant. So they have a little bit of back and forth, but really Spears, once they move to the outside, goes nuts. He throws Cutler into the barricade a couple times. And then he hits later on at the end of the match, he hits a big boot, hits a huge Death Valley driver, picks up the 3 count. So is Shawn Spears' finishing move the Death Valley driver? Not really sure. Anyways, after the match, Spears set up to give Cutler a Death Valley driver on a chair in the ring. Joey Janela runs down, comes out, makes the save. Janela's pissed because of the attack from when he was out having a smoke last week, which was shown on AEW Dark. And then we had a really good hype video for Omega Moxley coming up at Full Gear, the unsanctioned match between the two of them. It was a pretty basic package, but it was solid, got done what it needed to do. It was mostly a recap, but there were a few new words added by Omega and Moxley. Omega was talking about how he brings the best is brought out of him when he is desperate or his back is against the wall. And then Moxley said the best comes out of him when people bring the worst out in him. So when he is destroying people with unabandoned or unrestrained violence is probably the best way to put it. But like, it was a really good hype package. And yeah, we need more of these. I wish the Britt Baker one was in here somewhere. Because that one from AEW Dark was really good and should have been shown on Dynamite to hype that. We probably could have done without the Brandon Cutler Shawn Spears match, because I don't think Spears or Cutler have a match at Full Gear. So I don't think that match was actually necessary. Let me look at all the other matches. Yeah, all the other matches had people who were going to be competing at Full Gear, and I don't think Shawn Spears is facing anybody at Full Gear, and Brandon Cutler definitely is not, because he's just lost every match so far. And then we had the main event of the evening, and which wrapped up pretty awesome. So it's Kenny Omega and Hangman Page versus Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara. There's actually a sign in the audience that says Kenny needs Coda. And then it cuts to commercial. On the fight feed is where all the good stuff happened. During the commercial, right as they went into commercial, Jericho's song is still playing, and JR says, "I love this song." And so Tony says, "Me too, I have it on Spotify." And then JR comes back and says, "You probably have it on 8-track. I thought that was pretty funny. The crowd starts chanting "Stupid Dick," which is a callback to something Cody said in his promo earlier. And Jericho grabs the mic and says, "What? With your southern accents are too messed up for me to understand what you're saying." And then there was an asshole chant that broke out, and he asked Justin Roberts, "What are they calling me?" And then they start chanting "Stupid Dick" again, and Jericho says, like, "Super Slick? Stupid John Wick? Katie Vick?" And the whole crowd goes, "Ooh." And then he says, "Trust me, it wasn't my idea." And then And then he says, well, I think you're all assholes. And then we actually come back from commercial break. So for those watching on TNT and the crowd is suddenly chanting, we are assholes, that is why that happened. So for people who are confused why the crowd was chanting, we are assholes, that's what happened. One thing that I really liked about this, Excalibur actually gave a history of Jericho and Omega in New Japan. When Jericho first came in to New Japan after leaving WWE, his first challenge was to Kenny Omega for the U.S. title, and they had a street fight for it, if I remember correctly. And it's probably the best match I had seen Jericho have in like 15 years. Maybe not 15, more like 10 years. But it was excellent. And then, did they meet again? They met again, obviously, at Double or Nothing, right? I believe. Yes. For the number one contendership. And then, and now they are meeting here. So there has been a little bit of a history with Omega and Jericho, but I'm glad to see them mentioning the history going back to New Japan, which is good to see. Omega and Sammy started off, not anything huge. When Hangman Page gets a tag, the crowd starts chanting cowboy shit. And so this happened a couple times. He got tagged in again, and they did it again. Omega hit a You Can't Escape on Sammy. So that makes it 3 times and 1 miss. So he's 3-1 on that so far in AEW. Sammy goes to the top rope, but Omega hits him with a drop kick out of midair. Looked like it sucked. Omega goes for Rise of the Terminator, but Jericho cuts him off, and then he sends Jericho to the outside. He goes for Rise of the Terminator again, but when he's running to the rope behind the ref's back, Jake Hager hits Omega behind the ref's back. And then in the commercial, again, we have a Fozzy sucks chant. And then something that happened, I love the play that Aubrey Edwards and Jericho have together, because I just love like their bickering and stuff. She starts a 5 count on Jericho to break it off because he had, I believe it was Adam Page in the ropes, and she's counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and Jericho turns to her and says 5, holding up 5 fingers. I thought that was pretty funny. The inner circle pretty much works over Omega through the rest of the break, and then Hager gets another shot behind the ref's back during the commercial break. And then after the commercial break, Hangman gets a hot tag from Kenny. He takes out Sammy and Jericho. He hits cross body over the top rope onto Sammy on the outside. Omega tosses Sammy to the outside as well. And when he does that, he does a backdrop over the rope, and he actually is caught by Jake Hager on the outside. So he puts him down, but then Omega hits Rise of the Terminator on both of them on the outside. Hangman Page then does his top rope moonsault to the floor. I'm going to say it again. Save those for more important matches. We don't need to see it in every single match you do. And then Hangman gets up on the apron, and Jericho's in the ring, and he's like feigning some like eye injury, and the ref, Aubrey Edwards, is checking on him. And who comes out but Pac? He jumps up onto the apron with Hangman, and he kicks Hangman right in the junk behind the ref's back. Then Hangman is pushed into the ring. Jericho hits Judas Effect and pins Hangman. And then we have the massive go-home brawl. We have the Inner Circle beating on Hangman after the bell. Cody runs out, and Jericho and Hager run away, but Cody takes out Sammy because he's still left in the ring. So Jericho and Hager are kind of walking backwards up the ring, kind of leaving Sammy behind to be beat up by Cody. And then on the ramp, MJF hits Hager from behind with a chair, and Jericho is really good. He just watches Hager fall to the ground like in front of him, and he's like, what the heck? And then he turns around, and MJF hits Jericho in the stomach with the chair. And then he sends Jericho into the ring for Cody. Cody hits the crossroads on Jericho. And then out through the crowd, Jon Moxley comes out with a barbed wire bat. He stares down Kenny. The Inner Circle actually get into the ring and take Cody Rhodes out of the ring and beat him up on the ramp. And then Kenny jumps out of the ring, grabs his barbed wire broom, and jumps back into the ring, and he's having a stare off with Jon Moxley. And then all of a sudden he's attacked from behind by Santana and Ortiz, so they're actually beating up both Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley. And then the Young Bucks run out, and they come out to take out Santana and Ortiz, and then they all fight their way up the ramp. And then Santana and Ortiz get Matt Jackson up to powerbomb him through the stage like they did last week with Ricky Morton. And Omega breaks that up by hitting a V-trigger on one of them, and Moxley hits a paradigm shift on the other. That is Santana and Ortiz. And then what is happening? Nick Jackson is standing up. He has climbed above one of the entrances, and then he does a dive off the top of the entrance onto the Inner Circle, and they all spread out, and now all the Elite members are standing at the top of the ramp, and all the Inner Circle members are standing down at the bottom of the ramp, and then they all run back at each other and start brawling, and then that's how the show went off the air. So that is one heck of a way to end a show, going into a pay-per-view on Saturday with just chaos. And now I am really looking forward to a lot of these matches. I am looking forward to Cody versus Jericho. I'm curious how this is going to go, especially with Cody saying that he will never challenge for the AEW championship ever again if he loses. Not sure. I don't think he's going to win, so I'm not sure why they put that stipulation out there, unless he really just kind of wants to sit back and actually be more management and help run the shows. I don't know if he actually does want to keep wrestling, or he just wants to be a producer, I guess. And then obviously we have Riho and Emi Sakura for the women's title. We have SCU versus Lucha Bros versus Private Party for the tag titles. And, of course, Moxley and Omega in an unsanctioned match, which I'm guessing that will probably go on last, since it's probably going to be a lights out match, which you have to do at the end of the card because it's technically not on the card. So I guess we'll see how it plays out. But all in all, this episode was really good. The only thing that kind of slowed it down was that Brandon Cutler and Shawn Spears match. They probably could have done without that match and put another promo package in somewhere, or just kind of put on a more important match going into the pay-per-view. I don't know if they could have put a Moxley in there instead to beat up Brandon Cutler, or something. I don't know. I think there needed to be something, but I think that match is probably the one that is most out of place on this particular show. But we'll see how it goes. Going into next week, we'll have the fallout, of course. But all in all, I liked it. There was more promo packages. We were hearing from people we haven't heard from, so we did hear a little bit from Kenny Omega, but really we needed a full Kenny Omega promo because he hasn't gotten one. and he's going into this match with Moxley, so it hasn't been hugely built up, but the video promo hype package did a little bit better. Jericho's video package was pure gold, like I said, and Cody's promo with his announcement was excellent. So we need more of this. So as far as this show goes, I'm going to give it a high 4.5 to 5 out of 5. So I give this a high 4, almost a 5. I think if it was just that one match, the Brian Cutler and Shawn Spears match would place with something else, this probably could have been a 5 out of 5 show. But this is really nitpicky at this point. The show was really good. I didn't have too many problems other than the refs not having as much power as they should. Hopefully after Full Gear is over, they kind of start reining this stuff in and kind of tightening up the rules a little bit. I mean, one thing they just need to do, if they're going to have rules that are different than WWE, which everybody is used to at this point, they just need to relay it to the audience, and they need to relay it more often. So I believe one of the rules is, but they never mention it, to get the legal man out on a tag match, they actually get a 10 count instead of a 5 count. Also, counting on the outside of the ring is at the ref's discretion. So they kind of tried to make light of that today in that first match when JR was complaining about how long they're spending on the outside. I believe Excalibur said it is the ref's discretion, stuff like that. So they just need to be a little clearer with that. And if it's going to be, I think it is a little bit of a problem with that ref's discretion on the outside and getting a little loose with those rules. As far as the kind of not brainwashed. I don't know what word to use here. The people who are very used to the WWE style, because it is obviously the biggest product, and they just, if it's going to be a problem because of how different it is, they might want to think about tightening it up a little bit, or making a more concerted effort on commentary to point out that it's the ref's discretion. You could say along the lines of, well, there's no outside interference. They still seem to be both willing combatants, mutual combatants in this match, even if it is on the outside. They could say something like that just to give it some parameters around what type of discretion the ref has, or when the ref should start counting, giving a 10 count to get them back into the ring, or continue letting it go. Just some sort of explanation around what the parameters of that discretion is, not just that, well, the ref can do whatever they want. If they don't care if they're out on the outside, then he won't count. If he does care, then he will count. They need to rein that in a little bit. As far as the promos go, why wasn't Britt Baker's promo from AEW Dark not on Dynamite? I don't know. It really should have been, because it is an excellent promo and it's building a match. It is going to be on the pre-show, last I heard, but it is building a match between Britt Baker and B. Priestley, and the promo was really good and it was short. There was no reason not to include it on the show. So those are kind of my two main complaints, the promo and the reffing. But all in all, good show, a lot of good wrestling, and that's mostly it. So I'm really looking forward to the pay-per-view this weekend. So I will be live after the show on Saturday night. So you can come back here. If you are listening to this on podcast, I am doing this live on YouTube. So you can go check out the YouTube channel. The link is in the podcast show notes, so you can head over there. If you would like this in a podcast, you can search it on all your favorite podcast providers. You should be able to find it. If you cannot find it, shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com, to let me know what service the show you can't find it on. It's just called That's Wrestling. It should be easy enough to find. And if you can't find it and want to pick up the RSS feed, go over to thatswrestling.com and you can pick up the RSS feed directly from Spreaker over there. But if you can't find it on your podcast platform, let me know so I can get it submitted, so I can get it on the platform, because that would be good for people to find it. Other than that, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to shoot me an email or anything, eric@thatswrestling.com. You can also check me out on Twitter. That's Wrestling1 with the number 1. And I will be doing my Power Struggle review sometime tomorrow evening. Probably shoot to go live at about 8 o'clock. So I will be doing my live review of Power Struggle. It was an excellent show. And then we have lots of stuff coming up, because starting on Saturday, not only is it Full Gear, but it is the first night of the it's a tag league tournament, and there are 16 teams in the tag league tournament over in New Japan, so I will be talking about that as well. So we're going to have a lot of New Japan tag league tournament coming up in the next month, so there'll be a lot of shows. But Power Struggle probably live tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, so that's Thursday, November 7th at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube, and then I will be live after AEW Full Gear on Saturday night when that goes off the air. I don't know what the end time of that is, probably 10 or 11, so I will see you there, hopefully, and thanks for watching and listening to That's Wrestling. See you guys.